Hello everyone in Chafin Land, and I want to welcome you to an introduction to primary and secondary sources. So make sure you have your guided notes and let's get started. So what are primary sources? Well, they are original records from the past recorded by people who were either involved in the event, they witnessed the event, or they knew the persons involved in the event. Now, they can also be objects or artifacts. Remember, we talked about artifacts. Artifacts are man-made things that tell us something about history. Or visual evidence, and we'll talk about what kind of visual evidence that might be. They give you an idea about what people who were alive at the time saw or thought about the event. Now, keep in mind that a primary source reflects only one point of view, and it may contain a person's bias toward an event. Now it says there in parentheses, prejudice. Okay, when we think of prejudice, often we think of stereotypes or racism, and that is certainly true as meanings of that word. But in this case, bias just means a strong feeling for or against something. So some examples of primary sources. Printed publications, things like books, magazines, and newspapers. Personal records, things like diaries, journals, or government documents. Visual materials, we mentioned this a minute ago. These are things like paintings, drawings, sculpture, even photographs. And here we go. Photographs, film, maps, those are visual materials too. And also oral histories like chronicles, memoirs, myths, and legends that are passed down by word of mouth. An example of oral history, it's an example specifically of someone sitting around a campfire telling a story. But primary sources can also be songs and poems. They can be tools, ornaments, or objects. Let's talk about secondary sources and what's different about them from primary sources. Well, secondary sources are made at a later time. They are not done at the time of something happening. And they include written information by historians or others, doesn't have to be a historian, after an event has taken place. And although they can be useful and reliable, they cannot reflect what people who lived at the time thought or felt about the event because they were created afterward. But they can represent a more fair account of the event because they can include more than one point of view. Or they might include information that was not available at the time of the event. So examples of secondary sources would be textbooks, biographies. Okay, remember the difference between a biography and an autobiography. A biography is written about someone else. An autobiography is someone writing about themselves. So an autobiography would be a primary source, but a biography would be a secondary source. Histories, written histories. Newspaper reports by someone who was not present. Charts, graphs, or images that were created after the time period. So for instance, this painting here looks like it's probably depicting a time during the Civil War, and it was not painted at the time. It wasn't somebody sitting by watching and painting this. Now, name that source. So on your notes, you have numbers, and the following slides have examples of primary and secondary sources. So see if you can classify each example as a primary or a secondary source, and you can just write P for primary or S for secondary. All right, number 1 is a magazine. TV Guide hasn't been around since you guys have been around. Number 2 is a diary or a scrapbook. Number 3 is a painting. Number 4 is a written history. Number 5 is a map. Number 6 would be a film. Number 7 is a newspaper. Number 8 is a photograph. Number 9 is an autobiography. Number 10 is also film. This is photographic film, so that would be put in a camera. Number 11 is a poem. Number 12 is a diagram or a chart. Number 13 is an artifact or an object. Number 14 is a chart or a graph. Number 15 is a sculpture. Number 16, those are textbooks. Number 17 is a sketch or a drawing. Number 18 is a diary. Number 19 is letters. Number 20 is a book. We're going to call that a written history. I don't think it's a true biography. Number 21 is an object or an artifact. Number 22 is a drawing. It would be like an architect's drawing. Number 23, which is the one on the left, is a photograph. And number 24 is a sculpture. Just a few more. Number 25 is a song. Number 26 are objects or artifacts. Number 27 is an autobiography. And that's a wrap. So remember that you can go back and view parts of or the entire video again, and you can always ask any clarifying questions. And remember that you are seen, you are known, you are cared for, and you are loved.